you have to recruit locally?
That's it. Yeah, we
I
recruit
see
local
what you're
people,
saying.
and so one of the fun things about it is, you know, a town, let's say a town will come to see the show, and they'll be their minister, their extension agent, they're, in the show, farmers that they know in the community, teachers, and it was up in Cedar Falls. One of I call them the whirling dervishes. They're really the people that put the show together for me in the community. And she had this idea of doing a celebrity cast. And so she got all the best known people in Cedar Falls, the TV personalities, the weatherman, the people, the radio DJs, the most famous professors. And oh man, we just packed the house. We had to come back and do a second performance on that one. That was really great. So, other questions, comments, anything?
Yeah. Do you intersect with any poet laureates from other states?
Oh yeah. The question is, do I intersect with any poet laureates from other states? Actually, that's been really fun, and the Poet Laureate of Kansas got us all together, and I helped with that whole production, and we had a state poet laureate conference last year in Lawrence, Kansas. It was great. And there were something like, not every state has a poet laureate. And so I think there's something like 36 states that have them, and 28 of us were there. It was great. And it was just this dynamic powerhouse of talent, and we had readings and workshops and panels, and people came and talked about their poetry and what they were doing in the arts. And Lawrence is a very interesting, fun town, so it was great. And now this is Karen Miriam Goldberg. She's organizing other things, and I actually had I had 4 or 5 of them all converge, and we had a reading at Prairie Lights in Iowa City, and then they asked me if I could find them another reading, and it was like Easter weekend. I'm like, oh man, I don't know, and they gave me like a month's notice if this was going to happen, and I'm like, I don't know, guys, and so I got us all a reading at the Kelowna General Store. It was great. It was great. Never before had the Kelowna General Store seen such a crowd. And we did. We had a great crowd. And I'm going to try to arrange. It's interesting. And then after that was so successful, and they had like a booming business day, and they said, hey, it's really interesting if you work with like local merchants and people, things happen. They said, hey, that was great. We had no idea anybody was going to show up. And then they said, you know what? We have this storeroom in the back of the store. Come and look at it. And it was just like this beautiful space with all white walls and everything. And she said, so we don't really need to store anything here. So what if we clean this out and have like art exhibits and poetry readings? And so that's what we're working on now. I mean, that's all it took to get that going. Yeah. So, yeah.
I don't know if this is too personal. I was laid up a while ago and couldn't get out of bed, and Linda Egan has brought me all of your books to read, which really helped.
That's great.
And so I'm very curious about two things. There was a big health crisis in one of your early books, and obviously it seems like you're better. I just wondered how you are.
A lot better.
Good.
Yeah, a lot better. Yeah.
Yeah, your energy is really good.
Yeah.
And
No,
you're not with pain.
I have no appendages except these glasses, and I'm working on getting rid of those.
I'm also interested in your spiritual investigation, because you're looking, And
Oh,
I
yeah.
wondered if you found more since the end of the book. Like, what happened next?
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting. I was raised what do they call them, a cradle Catholic. I was born into that, and it provided me with a lot of great foundation. But I had a lot of problems with it too. And so at this point, when I had my health crisis, I mean, there's nothing like a near-death experience to get you to look at your spirituality. If you haven't done it before, it's like, bang, all right, now you better. And so that's what I was searching out in the Desert Pilgrim. And what it sifted out to be for me was a belief in mysticism, which is not some, woo-woo thing, but a belief, and it really was. I was able to encompass all the things that I know and love. There is a belief. It's simply in the world is one energy, and there's one life force that unites all of us and everything on the earth, and that we better, pay attention to that and take care of that. And then I did a lot of study and reading and saw how that sense of mysticism had different demonstrations in all cultures and religions around the map and the globe in their interesting little ways. I know you're familiar with that idea here, and that's what I ended up with, and it turned out really great. And my healers are most remarkable people. When the book originally came out, you see it on the table. It was a little smaller book. But Father Sergei was dying of liver cancer, and you don't live very long with that. And so it was really kind of sad at the end of the book. I was getting so much better, and he was really physically deteriorating. I mean, really serious. His fellow monks had dug his grave, literally, in his garden. The Russian Orthodox are like to be buried in their garden. So there was this hole there ready to go. And then I had to go home, and it's like these people don't email, It's hard to keep in touch with a mystic. You have to just send the vibe out there and hope that they'll answer. And so I wrote the book, and then I just assumed that Father Sergei is dead, and I sent the first copy to Lou, the healer and the herbalist, and she called me. I couldn't believe it. She called me up and she said, "Oh, this is wonderful. This is so great. You'd have to send a copy to Father Sergei." And I'm like, Father Sergei, you want me to send him a copy? Like, how much is that going to cost? It's like, and she's like, "No, he's alive." And I'm like, "Okay, because now it's like 2 or 3 years later, and liver cancer." And I said, "That's impossible." And I said, "What happened? What happened?" And she said, "Well, you went home. You got all better. He about to die. You go home." And that very night, I took some herbs over to him. I made up a special potion for him, and I called down a special blessing from the Holy Spirit. And he lived. She said, "He lived." And, I still didn't believe it, so I got on a plane, went down there, and he's still alive. It's like now 10 years later.
Wow.
And I've told doctors, isn't that great? I've told doctors this, and they're like, "Oh, what did he do? What kind of chemo did he do?" And I'm like, no, I didn't do anything. And I'm like, and they said, "What did he do?" And even alternative doctors said, "What did he do?" And I said, "Herbs and prayer." I said, "Well, he's alive." So it's really great. Yeah.
And there's a hole in the ground.
That's right. They had to fill in the garden. So miracles do happen. Yeah. Yeah. There is. I played the banjo as a kid, and then sort of didn't think it was cool and put it away. And then actually I got back from New Mexico, and I saw a little notice on the co-op bulletin board in Ames at Wheatsfield, and it said, "Natural pork, no antibiotics or hormones." I thought, that's for me. And so I took out my little pad and pencil and wrote down the phone number, and you could buy a whole or a half and all that. And then right next to it, there was another little notice that said, "Clawhammer banjo lessons." And I was like, "Oh man, maybe I'll take banjo lessons again." And I got out my pad again and took the number. It was the same number. So I called the number. Yeah, and I got this voice on the other line. I said, "I would like to order a side of pork and clawhammer banjo lessons." And so, don't know how many people in here play the banjo, but here's the deal. It's really hard to get somebody to teach you. And you can get somebody to teach you, but they'll tell you they play the banjo, but they're really like one lesson ahead of you, and they really play the guitar, or they really play the fiddle or something. And so, I started to quiz this guy that got on the phone, this Dave. Yeah. And I'm like, so how'd you learn to play the banjo? And he said, well, I had an old banjo at my house, and I was farrowing pigs, and really having a lot of trouble with the coyotes. And I was taking my shotgun out in my pickup truck, and I had a big white dog, and I took the dog out there. And he said, and then, it really wasn't doing, I was staying up all night out there farrowing the pigs out in the field, and it wasn't really doing the job. And, well, I had this old banjo in my house, and I took that with me one night, and I sat down on a big 500-pound sow, and I started plucking out some tunes. And you know what? Did more good than the dog or the shotgun. This is man for me. I'm signing up for the banjo lessons. So Dave Lozier, this hog farmer, actually made this banjo. This was really cool. He made it just for me and the size of my hands and everything. I had this old banjo that was literally being held together by safety pins, the strings, and he was like, yeah, get rid of that banjo. And so he makes banjos in his old hog shed, and he's the real deal. It's great. Dave Lozier, his name is in Camrar, Iowa. So. All right, so should we sign some books? And I think there's some refreshments over here, and thank you once again for coming, a great audience tonight.